storm-lashed silent house with force. In barely lit room, 6-year-old girl with face flushed from fever clung to teddy bear. Between broken whispers, she looked at woman she had feared until yesterday and murmured, "Mom, don't leave me." Stepmother, with tears in eyes, held her in arms, not knowing that word would change her destiny. And just when desperation covered everything, door burst open and millionaire father returned unexpectedly, ready to change everything forever. What city are you watching this video from, and what time is it? By the way, if you're enjoying my videos, I'd be so happy if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. Before starting, tell me, from which country are you watching us? They say stepmother can never be mother, but nobody knew what happened inside that house in Boston. Matteo had spent months rebuilding life after losing wife. He was 40 years old with hope that arrival of Isabel, elegant 33-year-old woman, would restore some warmth to home. She came from family in Philadelphia, accustomed to different routine, different pace. She had never had children, and often heard in silence murmurings of sisters-in-law. What's point of marrying if she can't give heirs? Those phrases had stuck in skin like thorns. Lucia, on other hand, was barely 6 years old. Small girl with large eyes, accustomed to hugging teddy bear she didn't let go even to sleep. She lived in a world where house walls were too large and silent, and where memory of lost mother was her only refuge. Afternoon, Matteo introduced Isabel as new wife. Autumn sky was covered with low clouds. On cobblestone streets, cold wind rose, dragging golden leaves inside house. However, table prepared with care shone. Spanish omelet, bread with tomato, glass of wine for adults, and glass of milk for little one. Matteo, with forced enthusiasm, took Isabel's hand and said tenderly, "Look, sweetheart, this will be your new mom." Lucia squeezed stuffed animal tightly, lowered gaze and said no word. Isabel sketched contained smile, almost tense, while arranging napkin on knees. At table reigned thick silence, interrupted barely by clinking of silverware. Girl, nervous, tried to reach milk glass. Glass tipped over and liquid spilled on white tablecloth. Lucia's heart accelerated, waiting for word of comfort. But Isabel frowned and said with cutting voice, "Be careful, girl." Matteo tried to soften moment with nervous laugh. "It's nothing. It's fine." With cloth, he dried mess himself while caressing daughter's head from other side of table. Isabel observed how man cleaned patiently, how he dedicated to girl tenderness she herself hadn't received in weeks. Dull discomfort seized chest, stab of jealousy she barely managed to hide. In that simple gesture of father toward daughter, Isabel saw invisible walls separating her from both. Dinner ended without great words, with each one taking refuge in thoughts. Matteo seemed satisfied having started new stage, though didn't realize glances Isabel and Lucia exchanged were charged with uncomfortable silences. Girl rose from table in silence and hid in room, hugging stuffed animal tightly. That night, in hallway barely lit by lamp, Isabel stopped before half-open door of children's room. Inside, girl whispered to bear, "Mom, I miss you." Voice was so low it seemed like prayer. Isabel remained motionless, listening to those words not directed at her. And for first time felt strange emptiness she couldn't name. That night when Lucia whispered to bear, "Mom, I miss you," Isabel listened from door. Next morning, house dawned tranquil in appearance, but silence enveloping it wasn't that of home at peace, but of fragile calm. Matteo, with perfectly ironed jacket, moved from one side of living room to other, collecting documents for business trip. Boston was covered with tenuous autumn mist, and air smelled of dampness. Isabel followed him with rigid smile, as if wanting to demonstrate everything was under control, though inside discomfort grew. Lucia observed from hallway clutching teddy bear, not fully understanding what it meant for father to leave so many days. When Matteo bent to say goodbye, girl whispered in ear, "Dad, don't go too long." He caressed hair tenderly. "It'll only be few days, sweetheart. Isabel will take care of you." That last phrase remained floating like burden. Isabel forced kind gesture, but tense lips betrayed her. As soon as Matteo closed door, an echo of car got lost on cobblestone street. Atmosphere changed. In interior courtyard decorated with red geranium pots, Isabel raised voice for first time that day. "Lucia, your room looks like battlefield. Young lady must be orderly. Go pick up things right now." Lucia obeyed in silence with lowered eyes, placing dolls in box and folding bed blanket. Each movement was slow, loaded with fear of making mistake. Isabel, meanwhile, pretended to review magazine, though what really did was contain discomfort she didn't know how to handle. As afternoon fell, church bells rang announcing evening mass. Town square bustled with life, children running after ball, mothers chatting seated on benches, elderly playing cards at nearby bar. Lucia walked there with barren arms, seeking bit of company amid loneliness. She sat in corner, caressing worn ears of doll and murmuring with trembling voice, "Mom, why don't you come back? I promise to behave well." Some neighbors, two older ladies wrapped in wool jackets, observed her sadly. One commented in low voice, "Poor creature. Her mother died so young and now she's with that cold stepmother." Other nodded. "Stepmothers never change. It's girl who always pays price." Isabel, who had followed Lucia intending to bring her back, heard those words, felt cheeks flush, not only with shame but resentment she couldn't control. She approached abruptly and snatched Bear from girl. "Stop with that doll and behave like young lady," she exclaimed harshly. Voice resonated in square, and for instant even children's games ceased. Several glances directed at her, some with surprise, others with silent reproach. Lucia, with contained tears, picked up doll from ground and lowered head, trying to become invisible. Return home was heavy. Isabel walked ahead with quick steps while Lucia followed dragging feet. Cold wind lifted dry leaves on sidewalks, and with each step, girl felt world becoming more distant. Isabel didn't turn once to check if she came behind. Inside struggled with contradictory feelings. Desire to be respected, fear of being seen weak, rage at neighbors' words, and that stab of guilt beginning to grow. In kitchen, Isabel dropped shopping bag on table with dry thud. "Go to room, Lucia." Girl obeyed without protesting and took refuge in room. There lay face down on bed, burying face in pillow. Between barely audible sobs, repeated again, "Mom, where are you? Come for me, please." Voice was so weak it seemed like prayer lost in air. Meanwhile, Isabel remained alone in kitchen. Tried to prepare coffee, but hands trembled holding coffee maker. She leaned on counter and remembered neighbors' hurtful words. Was it true she could never be mother? Was it true her destiny was only to be seen as cold stepmother? Stab of insecurity pierced her, though still wasn't willing to acknowledge it. Later, when house remained silent, Isabel passed by girl's room. Heard slight murmur but didn't open door. She preferred to lock herself in room, pretending hadn't heard anything. That night, while Mateo prepared suitcase for trip, Isabel smiled at him. But Lucia in silence knew something worse would come in absence. Clouds closed over Boston at nightfall, and rain began hitting window panes with insistent rhythm. Wind dragged wet leaves through cobblestone streets, and streetlights reflected in puddles, illuminating night with golden flashes. Inside, atmosphere was colder than outside. Isabel leafed distractedly through magazine on sofa, though actually wasn't reading. Each page turned was only attempt to ignore sensation of discomfort carried inside. From Lucia's room came muffled coughs. Girl had spent hours with face flushed from fever, hugging stuffed animal as if it were lifeline. At some point during day had started with chills, but Isabel hadn't paid attention, convinced it was simple cold. However, now trembling in little one's voice pierced walls. "Mom, don't leave me." Isabel stood with sigh of annoyance, walked through hallway and opened room door. Air there was dense, charged with heat from small electric heater and smell of poorly closed syrup. Lucia was curled under blanket with forehead pearled with sweat. Glassy eyes rose toward Isabel, who for instant remained paralyzed. Girl extended weak hand as if seeking contact. "Always so fragile," Isabel murmured, more to herself than to girl. But upon approaching and placing hand on Lucia's forehead, scorching heat made her retreat with alarm. It wasn't simple cough. Fever was high, too high. For first time, thread of real fear ran through body. Lucia sobbed, pressing Bear against chest. Between stammerings said, "If you love me, I'll call you Mom." Those words pronounced amid delirium pierced Isabel's armor. Felt something break inside, wall she had until then held with stubbornness. Tears came to eyes unexpected and found herself caressing girl's cheek with tenderness she didn't even know existed in her. For a few seconds, Isabel remained motionless, struggling between habit of coldness and urgency of situation. She remembered cruel phrases of neighbors in square. Stepmothers never change. Also remembered voice of own mother years ago, telling her she couldn't give grandchildren to family. All those wounds mixed and suddenly became fierce impulse to prove opposite. She stood abruptly, took thick blanket and wrapped Lucia carefully. Heart beat strongly as girl moaned against shoulder. Isabel went to hallway, grabbed keys and opened door. Cold rain hit her full force, soaking in seconds. Didn't matter. She ran through dark streets, slipping between puddles with girl in arms. Streetlights projected silhouette against wet facades. Some neighbors poked heads from windows, surprised to see woman who always seemed distant now running under storm with child in arms. With each step, Isabel felt air escaping, but pressed girl tighter against chest. Town health center was few streets away, and each meter seemed eternal. Rain stuck hair to face, cold chilled bones, but new force pushed her forward. In that instant, Isabel was no longer insecure woman seeking to be respected. She was, without knowing it, mother fighting to save daughter. When arrived at center door, white lights inside seemed like beacon. She entered panting, soaked, with girl trembling in arms. Nurse stood alarmed. "Quick, bring her here." Isabel placed her on stretcher, and while doctors moved quickly, remained, standing with trembling lips, repeating in silence prayer she didn't remember ever making. Rain continued hitting with force health center windows, mixing with tears Isabel couldn't contain. She realized something in her had changed irreversibly. For first time feared losing Lucia, and in that fear discovered love that had been hidden under layers of resentment and pride. With tears mixed with rain, Isabel took her in arms and ran out toward town health center. Health center was quiet despite storm. In waiting room, couple of elderly people commented in low voice on rain's intensity while rubbing cold hands. Isabel entered soaked with hair stuck to face, and little Lucia in arms. Nurse quickly led her to stretcher, and in matter of minutes, doctor examined girl. "She's not serious, ma'am," said calmly. "But fever is high, needs rest, medication, and above all constant care." Isabel nodded, unable to articulate word. Lips trembled as she observed Lucia, who breathed with difficulty but was now calmer thanks to doctor's expert hands. Girl continued hugging Bear, soaked like her. Isabel dried it with towel offered. By assistant with gesture so delicate even nurse smiled, seeing her. She remained seated next to stretcher, squeezing Lucia's hand. Rain murmur against windows accompanied silence. She remembered like shadow words heard in square. Stepmothers never change. Was that what everyone thought of her? Was that image Lucia had of woman who should care for her? Girl moved slightly, and with weak voice murmured, "Thank you for not leaving me alone." Those words stuck in Isabel's chest. She closed eyes and let tears run free, tears contained for years. Never had felt so much fear or so much tenderness at once. In that instant, understood what had rejected with such harshness was actually what most desired in silence, to be mother, though not of own blood. Hours later, when fever began dropping and doctor discharged them, Isabel wrapped Lucia in dry blanket and carried her again in arms. Left hallway with slow steps. Older lady waiting turn in room looked sympathetically and told her, "Now you really look like real mother." Isabel lowered head ashamed, but inside something ignited. For first time didn't reject those words. Walk back was less hard than going. Storm had subsided and streets shone under streetlight glow. Fresh air smelled of wet earth. Isabel held Lucia against chest, feeling warmth of girl's body, listening to slow breathing as she slept. Each step was revelation. No longer carried her from obligation, but with visceral need to protect her. Upon arriving home, lit fireplace and prepared hot broth. Lucia, half asleep, opened eyes and looked at her as if seeing someone different. Isabel caressed forehead carefully. "Forgive me, little one," whispered almost voicelessly. Girl didn't respond, but settled closer to her. That simple closeness melted remaining ice in heart. Later, while laying her in bed, Isabel surprised herself humming lullaby forgotten since own childhood. Melody floated in air, mixing with fire crackling in fireplace. Felt in that moment was repairing not only relationship with Lucia, but also own wounds, those invisible scars carried for years. In living room solitude, Isabel understood that rainy night had marked before and after. Cold, insecure woman full of jealousy remained behind. Before her in arms had opportunity to start anew and wasn't willing to waste it. Upon returning home under same rain, Isabel carried Lucia in arms, and inside was no longer same woman. Next morning dawned with renewed air. Sun entered timidly through curtains and house, which used to feel cold and silent, seemed to have different heartbeat. Isabel got up early, turned on stove and put chicken broth with carrot and bit of rice to boil. Aroma filled rooms, bringing warmth that for long time hadn't been felt there. While stirring pot, hummed melody from childhood, surprised her voice sounded so soft after so many years of silencing songs. Lucia descended stairs with slow steps, still tired but more animated than night before. Carried disheveled hair and hugged bear, which still retained slight smell of dampness. Isabel received her with smile that wasn't usual. Sincere smile, though timid. "Come, daughter. You need strength," she said, serving steaming bowl of soup. Girl looked at her warily, as if not knowing whether could trust that gesture. Took spoon slowly and tried sip. Taste comforted her so much, lips curved in discreet smile. Isabel, seeing her, felt something loosen inside chest. Never would have imagined happiness could hide in simple spoonful of shared soup. During morning, Isabel decided to help her get ready. Seated before hallway mirror, patiently combed girl's tangled hair. "Look how pretty you are," murmured tenderly. Lucia, surprised, didn't pull away or protest. Reflection in mirror showed two different faces, but with invisible thread that for first time began uniting them. Later in living room, Lucia entertained herself with colored pencils. Drew figures under rain, tall woman and small girl under shared umbrella. Isabel approached with coffee cup and contemplated paper. "Is this us?" she asked with broken voice. Girl nodded timidly. That innocent affirmation was like hug for Isabel. Eyes filled with tears, though tried to smile not to frighten little one. In afternoon, received call from Mateo from New York. Voice sounded hurried. "Everything okay at home?" Isabel squeezed receiver tightly. Hesitated few seconds, but responded calmly. "Everything's under control." Said nothing of fever, or run under rain, or tears shed in waiting room. That secret belonged to her and Lucia, intimate bond nobody else could understand. When hung up, returned to kitchen and proposed something unexpected. "Wanna help me make bread?" Lucia opened eyes surprised. She accepted. Both kneaded together, girl laughing when flour stuck to nose. Isabel laughed too for first time authentically. That sound-filled house and even geraniums in courtyard seemed to lean toward window to listen. As afternoon fell, Isabel took Lucia to terrace. Sky-painted orange tones and church bells sounded in distance. Seated side by side, girl showed small notebook where had written with crooked letters, "Thank you, Mom." Isabel read it with shudder. Brought hand to mouth containing crying. Later, when time came to sleep, Isabel didn't order or scold, simply took storybook and read in low voice. Lucia, with eyes increasingly heavy, curled under blanket. Before closing eyelids completely, murmured between dreams, "Good night, Mom." Isabel remained paralyzed. Words resonated in room like bells. Unknown emotion pierced chest, and with trembling voice only managed to caress little one's hair. Didn't respond. But inside, that night felt had received greatest gift of life. At nightfall, while Mateo was traveling, Lucia whispered half asleep, "Good night, Mom." Autumn sun illuminated Boston streets when Mateo returned from trip. Air was cooler and in square children played under church bells ringing at noon. Had been away several days, and upon entering home expected usual routine. Timid Lucia, distant Isabel, tense silence of recent weeks. However, what found was very different. In main room, smell of fresh flowers filled environment. On table, vase with daisies Lucia had collected in courtyard gave cheerful touch. And on walls hung children's drawings, colorful figures, houses under rain, woman with umbrella, and girl smiling under protection. Mateo stopped, surprised. On sofa, Isabel was combing Lucia's hair patiently. Girl laughed as woman made crooked braids and both seemed oblivious to world. Upon seeing him enter, Lucia ran toward him enthusiastically. "Dad, look, this is my family." Showed newly finished drawing, 3 figures holding hands under blue sky. Mateo felt knot in throat. Approached Isabel, who stood slowly. She seemed different. Face was relaxed. Eyes softer. Wasn't insecure and cold woman left before trip, but someone renewed, full of unknown calm. Mateo took hand and murmured with moved voice, "Thank you. Didn't know this could happen." Isabel lowered gaze with contained tears, but didn't hide them. Lucia, enthusiastic, hugged both. Gesture was so natural, neither Isabel nor Mateo could contain emotion. Girl whispered sincerely, "Now I have Mom." Isabel held her tight, crying silently. Never had words had so much power. It was as if entire past of rejection, neighbors' murmurings, jealousy, and fears had been erased in instant. Afternoon advanced slowly, bathed by golden light entering through windows. They shared simple snack, fresh bread with olive oil and hot chocolate for girl. Mateo observed in silence as Isabel and Lucia laughed together and understood true wealth of home wasn't in business or properties, but in that union born from adversity. Later, while church bell rang in distance, Isabel went to courtyard with Lucia to water geraniums. Girl jumped between puddles still wet from previous storm, and woman watched her tenderly, remembering that night Wen had carried her under rain. Knew then that act had saved not only girl but also herself. It was her way of repairing wounds, closing gap of so many years of insecurity. When sun began hiding behind rooftops, 3 gathered in room. Mateo put on old vinyl record, soft song that filled house with nostalgic music. Lucia danced with clumsy steps while Isabel accompanied her laughing. Mateo moved, joined circle, and for instant, everything seemed perfect. Church bell rang, and for first time that house filled with different silence. Silence of peace. House that one day was full of silences ended up lighting with different light. That of love learned through mistakes and reconciliation. Isabel, woman who arrived marked by insecurity and distrust, found in Lucia something never had, opportunity to be mother from heart. And girl, who before fell asleep hugging bear asking absent mother, discovered destiny reserved another kind of embrace, that of someone who decided to stay. Dear listener, if this story has moved you, write 1 in comments. If you think it could be told differently, mark 0. We haven't witnessed only family's life, but proof that even amid storm, tenderness can always sprout. We all carry wounds and prejudices, but brave gesture suffices to change course. Isabel understood it that night under rain when feared losing girl and discovered heart opened. Lucia understood it when pronounced with faith word Mom, for first time, sealing bond nothing could break. Lesson is clear. Unconditional kindness transforms destinies. Each person deserves love and home where feeling at peace. Wealth isn't in money or titles, but in capacity to extend hand and listen. Just like lamplit and window guides lost traveler, small act of compassion can illuminate darkest nights. And like Isabel, we all have possibility to repair broken and choose to live not only for ourselves, but also for those who need us. Dear friend, perhaps you hear these words next to window open to autumn. Think, is there pending reconciliation in your life? Life always offers second chances, but we must dare take them. If this story touched you, share it. Perhaps someone upon hearing it will find strength to extend bridge toward child, sibling, or even toward themselves. Because true peace isn't born from great deeds, but from those small gestures that, sown with love, bloom in new beginnings.